California is in the news around this new AI bill that seems to have passed the legislature right now. I think it's just waiting for Governor Gavin Newsom to sign it. But boy, oh boy, has this caused a huge amount of controversy just because, what happens is sort of like it harkens back a little bit, Jaden, to the social media days. Like who's responsible for what? Back in the olden days, was Facebook responsible for this, or were the users responsible for this? And now we're talking about huge potential laws governing organizations in California around large foundational models. And are they culpable? Are they responsible? This is some very slippery, slopey stuff here, Jaden. What do you know about this, and why are we talking about it right now?
Okay, well, first I'm going to break down a couple things from an interesting VentureBeat article on this. I'll just read a quote there, but then I want to tell you about two of the really high profile people that are for it and against it. Actually, over 100 people have come out supporting it. So I'll talk about that. But here's a quote from VentureBeat on exactly what it is. It said, "It would establish liability for developers of large-scale AI models that cause catastrophic harm if they fail to take appropriate safety measures. The legislation applies only to models costing at least $100 million to train and operate in California, which is the world's fifth largest economy." Okay, a couple things that I think are interesting. Number one, liability to, of course, the AI companies if something catastrophic happens. The only thing that's like, I don't know, opaque is like, what is catastrophic?
Right.
It's not really defined, so people can make a case either way. So potential lawsuits from that. And the second thing is appropriate safety measures. It's kind of interesting. We recently did a podcast on OpenAI's new model that they just released, their Strawberry, their O1, whatever you want to call it. And it was interesting because ahead of time, I saw these like a bunch of tweets from Sam Altman where he's like, "Oh yeah, like we finished all like the red teaming and safety testing, and we sent this over to like the U.S. government officials to approve, and like everything looks good, so we rolled it out to everyone." And it's like, he really wants to make sure that everyone out there knows, don't worry, we tested this thing. And, we kind of covered, there's been a bunch of like, not exposés on it, but like a bunch of people speculating or talking about the fact that it probably isn't even a unique model. And Sam Altman said something very similar to this in a tweet. He said something like, it has all the same capabilities of GPT-4, but has some extra stuff. I don't know, whatever. I got to go find the tweet before I misquote him. But like, he alluded to reading, like when I read his tweet on it was like, it's pretty much GPT-4 with a bunch of like security stuff. So, or with a bunch of like new software stuff, it helps you do chain of prompt reasoning. So technically you could have, if you knew the right prompts, you could have gotten the models to do this beforehand ahead of time. So really it doesn't need red teaming or safety checking because it's the same model as before. Anyways, why do I bring this up? Because obviously Sam Altman is concerned about the public perception of what doing enough around AI safety is. And when people, for example, Elon Musk has like a very laissez-faire attitude when it comes to AI models, and he's like, Grok is going to be like, the cool edgy AI model, and we're not going to have like as many guardrails, and it can just like tell you how to make cocaine if you ask it to, and like tell you how to do crazy stuff, like rah. So like that attitude seems to be what they would like to prosecute, right? But like in reality, like is either model really that much safer? Like, can you still jailbreak a model that's went through red teaming? Yes, because jailbreaking is like hacking. You figure out a new trick, and like, did they do enough? It's like, oh, we spent a whole bunch of money and we didn't catch this one like bug. It's like, whose fault is it? So it's just like it's so tricky because it seems like they obviously want to prosecute an attitude, which I understand, but it's like it's so opaque to what that actually is to doing enough. So, anyways, that's my speculation on how that goes.
Yeah, and it kind of raises this big existential question around like who's responsible for what. And we've had a lot of huge names in the AI space coming out against this, just saying. And it's funny because Jan LeCun, who's our guy over at NYU, has a very different take. I mean, so Andrew Ng and others are sort of saying, hey, listen, this is going to harm innovation. It's going to harm the ability to build these things. And believe me, China's not slowing down and everything like that. And it's just going to put a lot of shackles on this. Jan LeCun had a funny one where he was just talking about the fact that, well, this isn't an existential risk, so why are we even regulating it? Which is a totally different approach, it feels like. But I guess the point here is that when you're talking about the people who are proponents of this, especially on the policy side, they do bring up a good point, right? Which is, listen, if we had done this back in the Facebook days, all that kind of stuff, we would never have had the problems that we had. but those felt like very, very different issues. Do you know what I mean? Like it wasn't, yes, Facebook really took advantage of young people and bred a kind of algorithm that would, uh, keep them linked in. And then, but the much bigger problem was, the sharing of private data, all that kind of stuff, all these things which feel like very black and white rules, which can be put in place and actually already are being put in place in terms of, hey, how is your data protected and things like that. This is data privacy that my wife Liz thinks a ton about and working with, with legal teams and stuff like that. Like, what is that all about? Well, that's all about your data privacy. That's critical. But when you're talking about actually slowing down the pace of innovation, which this is going to do, and especially as you sort of alluded to too, like, what does that even look like when they say like, doing something? And Jane, you and I were talking about this offline too. Like, what is what is a crisis? What is a catastrophic event? What does that even look like? I don't think that we have any sense right now of even what an example of that could be, other than sort of a science fiction-y kind of thing, or a leak, or a breach or something like that. But can you even imagine for yourself what that? So, by the way, it's not that I'm for or against. I just want to kind of think about it in a different way. Like, is this going to slow it down or not? And what's the price of that? And what does a catastrophic risk look like? Those are the questions that I'm asking myself these days.
Yes, 100%. And I mean, when people talk about catastrophic risk, I think the ones that like people speculate on, regardless of if this is realistic, is like the Terminator.
Right.
North Korea uses it to hack into like the US government's headquarters or to the power grid, or they use some sort of AI tool to mass call every voter in America and tell them that their candidate has been assassinated or
Right.
something crazy, right? Like, I think that's like catastrophic is when I say catastrophic, it's like, it's gotta be like scale, I think, right? So like takes out all the power grid,
Right.
contacts everybody, does something crazy that like you wouldn't be able to do with just people or something, theoretically, right? I don't know. So that's, I think, what they're concerned about. Whether that's actually possible or will happen, I think is completely different. What I do think is interesting, though, is you have about 110 people that are coming from Anthropic, OpenAI, Google, DeepMind, and then also Meta that have all signed the bill. So it's like ex-employees or current employees that work in AI at these companies. San Francisco Standard published an article about this, and you had Jeffrey Hinton, he's often referred to as like the godfather of AI, and he tweeted kind of this headline of this article and said, "I was happy to add my name to the list of employees and alumni of AI companies. These signatories have better insight than almost anyone else into what is coming next with AI, and we should heed their warnings." Okay, so 110 people here, the godfather of AI, Elon Musk, who has his own AI company, XAI and Grok, also said that he supports the bill. So everyone supports the bill, right? Like, who could possibly be against it? Well, I want to bring you the contrarian approach or take, which is Yan LeCun, who Connor kind of mentioned is against this. He tweeted in response to Jeffrey, and I just want to read you some of the points that he makes because I think this is interesting. And you really do not get an opposition to this, like from a lot of people, especially someone so prominent. So this is interesting, especially considering Yan lives in California, and he typically, I mean, I would say he votes the same way most of the people that signed this like document do, right? So it's just interesting that he has a different perspective when like even Elon Musk is agreeing with them. So anyways, this is what he said. He said, most of these signatories have a distorted view of what's coming next with AI. The distortion is due to their inexperience, naivety on how difficult the next steps in AI will be, wild overestimates of their employees' lead and their ability to make fast progress, and financial incentives to hinder open source AI platforms, since almost all of them work for providers of proprietary AI systems. Gives a little dig at everyone else that's not open source like he's building. He then says, as you and I know, generation after generation of AI researchers have made the same mistakes, thinking that human level AI is, quote, just around the corner because of some new paradigm that they are working on. They have constantly underestimated how difficult it is because they have an incentive to dismiss the limitations of their favorite paradigm as mere engineering problems, and they can't foresee the obstacles they'll bump into before bumping into them. So this is a really interesting point. I don't know, Connor, what's your take on this?
Yeah. I think with all these like really big players, right, like the Jan LeCuns and Elon Musks and the Sam Altman, it does seem to just come down to what is in their interest. And I'm not sort of saying that even in a pejorative sort of way. It's just, Jan LeCun is like super obsessed with open source. Of course, like that's why he's with Meta. He went over there to do something really, really extraordinary. He's also been quoted as saying something along the lines of like, this has like the intelligence of a house cat, all that kind of stuff. But then you have other. This is what's so interesting about AI, and this is why I always love these kind of conversations, because you can have Jan LeCun on one side, Jeffrey Hinton on another side, Elon Musk on another side, Andrew Ng on another side, Sam Altman on another side, and you can have all these people who are giving diametrically opposed views on the future. And I'm not talking about where we're going to be in 50 years. I'm talking about where we're going to be in like 2 years. And how can that possibly be? Like, you don't have people who are creating the new combustion engine or something like that, like having these wildly different takes on this. So I think one of the takeaways we want with this, and especially on something like an AI applied podcast, is whenever you read something, just don't take it at face value because you really trust that person, right? I mean, I've heard Sam Altman say things that a year later sound totally ridiculous, even though he's, the king of all of this stuff. And he also admits that he's like, GPT-4 is just like sort of like really dumb. And a year earlier, he was saying this is potentially AGI. Just, I urge you all out there, when you're reading this news and when you're looking at these California bills and you're looking at safety, don't just sort of like leap to a conclusion. Read the other side as well. And remember that on the other side are people with way bigger brains on this who have all kinds of insight into this. And yes, understand like where they might be coming from. But a lot of these people are they're academics. And I trust Jan LeCun. I know he's a Meta guy, but he's also an NYU guy. So it's not like one side is evil and the other side is, or one side is like super conservative and the other side is super liberal. It doesn't work like that. Just look at all sides of this. Don't make quick decisions because these are going to have implications, but even the most important people in this sphere don't know where we're going to be in 2 years. And that's what's interesting to me about it.
100%. Yep. I think that's a fantastic takeaway. Hey, everyone, thank you so much for tuning into the podcast today. If you enjoyed this episode, you know what you would really enjoy? Connor's incredible AI course. This thing I've been seeing pop up all over my LinkedIn this week. People posting their certificate, completing his generative AI course. This is a generative AI course like none you've ever seen before. How often do you see people that take some random little side course or certification, like posting this all over LinkedIn? This thing is absolutely amazing. So I highly encourage all of you guys, the link's in the description. If you have not done it already, do not waste any more time. This is going to change fundamentally how you use AI, and it's a ton of fun. You know, Connor, that's how he rolls. Thank you so much for tuning into the podcast today, and we hope that you all have an amazing rest of your day.